Let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a massive, sweeping 600-year history of how two absolute global juggernauts, the Islamic Caliphates and the Mongol Empire, collided. It's a clash that quite literally changed the map of the world forever. But before we get out onto the battlefields, you really need to hear this chilling historical prophecy. Right, so this prophetic hadith was recorded long before any of these events actually took place, but it perfectly foreshadowed this terrifying, seemingly unstoppable force that would eventually sweep across the Islamic world. It is a really fascinating glimpse into how history and prophecy intersect. So, here is our roadmap for how this all unfolds. We'll cover 1. The Islamic Golden Age, 2. Fractures and the Crusades, 3. Two simultaneous rising powers, 4. The brutal Mongol invasion, 5. The fall of Baghdad, and 6. A surprising historical twist. Section 1. The Islamic Golden Age. To truly grasp the sheer scale of the eventual fall, we first have to understand the immense heights these early Islamic empires reached. Following a super rapid 30-year expansion under the Rashidun leaders, the empire transitioned through some very distinct eras. You had a 90-year rule by the Umayyad dynasty, which ultimately paved the way for the Abbasids. And the Abbasids had this massive 500-year reign that effectively turned the Islamic Empire into the world's sole superpower. I mean, they were completely unmatched on the global stage. So why did the Abbasids thrive for so long where others struggled? Well, the Umayyads ran a heavily Arab-exclusive government, and that sparked some serious internal rebellion. The Abbasids, however, entirely abandoned those exclusionary policies. By actively bringing Persians, Turks, Greeks, and other groups into their administration, they integrated diverse cultures and completely solidified their grip on power. And that inclusivity directly fueled the Islamic Golden Age, centered right in their capital of Baghdad. The absolute crown jewel of this era was the House of Wisdom. Imagine a massive library and translation hub that actively funded scientists from all over the known world. It led to monumental world-changing breakthroughs, like Al-Khwarizmi's invention of algebra. During this time, Arabic essentially became the global language of science and literature. It was a true intellectual renaissance. Section 2. Fractures and the Crusades. But, as history so often shows us, when an empire reaches its absolute, undisputed peak, the only real path left is decline. The Abbasid caliphs started relying really heavily on a powerful Seljuk Turkish army. Over time, that army essentially orchestrated a military soft coup. They took actual operational control, reducing the caliph to just a figurehead. You know, a leader with a fancy title, but no real authority. And because of this, that vast, once unified empire fractured into much smaller, severely divided territories. That deep internal fracture had devastating, real-world consequences. It directly allowed European crusader forces to take advantage of the divided Muslim world, and in 1099, they captured Jerusalem. Historical sources describe this as an incredibly violent chapter, with horrific recorded massacres of men, women, and children, while homes and mosques were literally set ablaze. The Muslim world was completely shattered and lacked any unified leader. Section 3. Two simultaneous rising powers. Moving into the 12th century, what happens next is almost cinematic. Two massive historical figures were born thousands of miles apart at the exact same time. Over in the Middle East, you have Salahuddin Ayyubi. Starting as a soldier, he painstakingly works to unite a fractured region, eventually becoming the powerful Sultan of Egypt and successfully retaking Jerusalem in 1192. But simultaneously, far away in the harsh Mongolian steppes, a boy named Temujin, who you probably know as Genghis Khan, was busy unifying the Mongol tribes and building an incredibly disciplined, massive army. Section 4. The brutal Mongol invasion. What's truly terrifying about Genghis Khan's rise is the sheer, brutal efficiency of his military machine. It was unlike anything the world had seen. The army was divided into squads of 10, rolling up into 100s, 1000s, and 10,000s. But here is the really chilling part. If just one single soldier fled from battle, the other 9 men in that squad were executed by their own army. Combine that structure with incredibly draconian laws, like executing an entire family for a single stolen horse, and you get an unbreakable, ruthless military force. Now, initially, Genghis Khan wasn't even looking to invade the Islamic world. He actually sent a diplomatic delegation to trade with the neighboring Muslim Khwarezm Empire. But the Khwarezm king made what might be one of the most fatal diplomatic errors in history.
He arrested the delegation and beheaded Genghis Khan's ambassador. That gave Genghis Khan all the excuse he needed. He immediately unleashed a 100,000-man invasion force straight into the Islamic world.
200,000. I want you to just let that number sink in for a second. That is the shockingly low number of people left alive in the Khwarezm Empire after the Mongol invasion. They started with a population of around 2 million. The Mongols notoriously built literal pyramids out of the skulls of the conquered, just to set a very clear message to the rest of the world. The devastation was absolute. Genghis Khan was a master of psychological warfare. He reportedly gathered the surviving Muslims in a mosque and told them, "I am the punishment of God." He actively viewed his devastating conquest and framed it to his victims as literal divine retribution against the fractured empires he was systematically wiping off the map. Section 5. The Fall of Baghdad. Fast forward a few decades, Genghis Khan has passed away, but his empire just keeps expanding. His grandson, Hulagu Khan, sets his sights on the ultimate prize, Baghdad, the absolute center of the Abbasid Caliphate. In 1258, this unstoppable Mongol force arrives at the gates. But instead of uniting against this existential threat, the citizens of Baghdad were dangerously distracted by internal sectarian debates and petty arguments. Hulagu Khan's army completely surrounded the city and destroyed it, abruptly ending the 500-year-old Abbasid Caliphate. The sack of Baghdad was a catastrophic loss for human history. The destruction was so thorough that historical accounts describe the Tigris River running red with the blood of countless citizens and the Caliph himself. And then, tragically, the river turned black. Why? Because the Mongols took the priceless books from the magnificent House of Wisdom and threw them all into the water. Centuries of accumulated human knowledge, a literal river of ink, just washed away. Which naturally brings us to a massive question. Was this the end of the Islamic Empire? With Baghdad completely destroyed and the Mongols advancing steadily toward the holy cities of Mecca and Medina, it honestly seemed like this entire civilization was on the brink of total erasure. Many people at the time genuinely believed the end of the world had arrived. Section 6. A surprising historical twist. But as we know, history rarely moves in a straight line. Down in Egypt, the remaining Mamluk Sultanate decided to attempt the impossible. They were going to fight back. Right as the Mongols were preparing to strike Egypt, news arrived that Hulagu Khan's brother, the supreme leader back in Mongolia, had died. Hulagu was forced to retreat with the bulk of his forces, leaving only a smaller garrison behind. The Mamluks seized this exact moment. They met the remaining Mongol army at Ain Jalut in Palestine, and in a shocking upset, they achieved a stunning victory. They shattered the myth of Mongol invincibility and permanently halted their expansion. And here is the incredible historical twist. As generations passed, the Mongols who had settled down and conquered these vast Muslim lands actually began studying the religion of the subjects they ruled over, and eventually, they converted to Islam themselves. Traditional Mongol names like Ogedei and Hulagu shifted to Muslim names like Muhammad and Babur. In fact, Babur, who is a direct descendant of Genghis Khan, would go on to found the magnificent Mughal Empire in India. They seamlessly absorbed the very culture they had once nearly wiped out. It leaves us with a fascinating final thought. Does history always belong to the victor, or does culture ultimately conquer the conqueror? Because while massive military might can certainly shatter empires, as the Mongols clearly proved, this history shows us that it's the enduring power of ideas, knowledge, and culture that truly survives and shapes our future. Definitely something to think about the next time you're looking at a map of the world.